The text came through while I was folding laundry, and I read it 3 times before the words fully landed. Hi Megan, so sorry for the short notice, but we've decided to simplify the flower girl situation for the photos. Lily won't be needed for the ceremony after all. Hope you understand. I stood there holding one of my daughter's small purple socks, my hands going very still. Simplify the flower girl situation. She's talking about my 7-year-old like she's a seating chart problem. If this story already has you hooked, go ahead and hit like, subscribe, and turn on that notification bell so you never miss a new story. Now, back to Megan. Lily had been practicing her walk down the aisle for 3 weeks, twirling in the living room in her rehearsal dress, scattering imaginary petals across our kitchen floor while she counted her steps out loud. She had no idea, folding laundry beside me 20 minutes earlier, that a text message was already deciding she wasn't wanted. My name is Megan Torgeson. I live in Appleton, Wisconsin, and I married my husband, Craig, 4 years ago, the second marriage for both of us, though only I came into it with a daughter. Lily was 3 when Craig and I met, 5 when we married, and in every way that mattered to me, Craig had been a real father to her from almost the very beginning. His mother, Roberta, had a harder time with that arrangement than either of us expected. Not with Lily directly. Roberta was never outright unkind to her face. It was always smaller than that, the kind of thing you can't quite point to without sounding paranoid. Roberta introduced Lily as Craig's stepdaughter at every family gathering, a phrase she never used for her own grandchildren born after Craig's siblings married. She sent birthday cards to her real grandkids 2 weeks early and Lily's exactly on time, if at all. Small things. Things I told myself I was imagining, right up until Craig's sister Whitney got engaged and Roberta took over wedding planning with the ferocious precision she brought to everything she considered important. The wedding was important. Lily, apparently, was a detail that could be simplified out of it. Whitney had asked Lily to be a flower girl herself, back in the spring, kneeling down at Lily's eye level at a family barbecue and asking so sincerely that Lily had cried happy tears right there on the lawn. I remember watching that moment and thinking, foolishly, that it meant something had finally settled, that Lily belonged in this family the same way any of Roberta's other grandchildren did. I should have known better. Whitney asking her wasn't the same as Roberta agreeing to it. The wedding planning stretched over 6 months. Roberta inserted herself into every decision. The venue, the flowers, the photographer, a woman from Milwaukee Roberta described more than once as worth every penny for the kind of magazine-quality photos she wanted from the day. Somewhere in those 6 months, Roberta had apparently decided the photos required a certain look, a certain coordinated aesthetic among the wedding party children, and Lily, 7 years old, missing her 2 front teeth, a cowlick that never fully cooperated no matter how carefully I brushed it, had become, in Roberta's mind, an inconsistency. Not fitting the photos. That's what she actually wrote. Like my daughter is a design element instead of a child who's been practicing her walk for 3 weeks. I called Craig at work the moment I finished reading the text a 3rd time, my voice shaking in a way I hadn't expected. She what? He said, and I could hear something harden in his voice immediately, the particular tightness he only got when it came to his mother. Good. Let him be angry too. I need someone else in this family to see it the way I see it. Craig called his mother that same afternoon. I sat in the next room, folding the rest of the laundry with hands that wouldn't quite stop shaking, listening to one half of a conversation that told me everything I needed to know about how Roberta actually saw my daughter. She's 7, Mom, Craig said. She's not a photo element you can just remove. A pause. That's not what fitting the photos means, and you know it. Another pause, longer this time, and when Craig spoke again, his voice had gone quiet in a way that scared me more than shouting would have. You said what about her hair? Don't ask him to repeat it. Whatever it is, I don't think I can hear it right now. He hung up a few minutes later and stood in the kitchen doorway for a long moment before he told me, carefully, the rest of what Roberta had said, that the flower girl dresses had already been coordinated with the other 3 girls, all blonde, all matching a specific look the photographer had apparently promised Roberta for the album cover shot, and that Lily's darker hair and gap-toothed smile would stand out in a way that pulled focus from the rest of the photos. She's talking about my daughter's face like it's a flaw in a design proof. I didn't cry in front of Craig that afternoon, though I wanted to. I went and found Lily instead, sitting on her bedroom floor surrounded by stuffed animals she'd arranged into an audience for her rehearsal walk, and I watched her twirl one more time across the carpet, completely unaware that somewhere across town, a woman who was supposed to love her had just decided she didn't belong in her own family's memories. She has no idea yet. I have to figure out how to tell her, and I have no idea how to do that without breaking something in her I can't fix. That night, after Lily finally fell asleep, I sat at the kitchen table with my laptop open, staring at the wedding website Whitney had built months earlier. Lily's name still listed under Flower Girl, a detail nobody had bothered to remove yet, frozen there like a small, quiet proof that some version of this family had once actually wanted her there. Roberta thinks this ends with one text message. She has absolutely no idea what she just started. I told Lily 2 days later, sitting cross-legged on her bedroom floor among the same stuffed animals she'd arranged as her rehearsal audience, choosing words as gently as I knew how. Aunt Whitney and Grandma Roberta decided they need to change the Flower Girl plan a little bit, I said. You won't be walking down the aisle this time, sweetheart. Lily's face did something I will never fully forgive Roberta for causing, a small, confused crumple, the kind of hurt a 7-year-old hasn't learned to hide yet. Did I do something wrong? No. You did everything right. You just didn't match the picture in someone else's head. No, baby, I said, pulling her into a hug. You didn't do anything wrong at all. I held her until she stopped shaking, and somewhere in that hug, something in me hardened permanently. I didn't call Roberta. I didn't want to give her the satisfaction of a confrontation she could later describe to the rest of the family as me overreacting to a simple photography decision. Instead, I did something I hadn't planned on doing at all. I drove out to see Craig's grandmother, Eleanor, the following weekend. Eleanor was 89, sharp as ever. Living alone in a small house outside Appleton, she'd refused to leave despite 3 separate family interventions about assisted living. She was also, as it happened, the family's unofficial historian. Boxes of photographs stretching back 60 years stacked carefully in her spare bedroom closet, organized by decade in a way that suggested she'd spent her retirement doing exactly this kind of quiet archiving. I told her, carefully, what had happened with Lily. I expected sympathy. I didn't expect what came next. That doesn't surprise me, Eleanor said, setting down her coffee cup with a small, tired sigh. Roberta's always been particular about photographs. I think I understand why, if I'm honest, even if I don't excuse it. What does that mean? Sit down a minute, Eleanor said. I want to show you something. If you're still with Megan right now, take a second, like this video, subscribe, and turn on that notification bell so you don't miss what happens next. Back to the story. Eleanor pulled a small photo album from the back of her closet, its cover faded blue, and flipped carefully through pages until she found what she was looking for. A family Christmas portrait from 1974, stiff and formal, 6 children arranged on a staircase in matching red sweaters. Count the children, Eleanor said quietly. I counted 6. There should have been 7, she said. Roberta's mother remarried the year before this photo was taken. Roberta came into that family the same way Lily came into ours, through a second marriage, not blood to the family taking the photo. Her step-grandmother insisted the portrait wouldn't look right with a child who didn't match the others' coloring standing among them. Roberta was 8 years old. She spent that entire Christmas in another room while the rest of the family took pictures downstairs. She did the exact same thing to my daughter that was done to her. I sat with that revelation for a long moment, feeling something complicated settle into my chest. Not sympathy exactly, though some smaller, quieter part of me did ache for an 8-year-old girl sitting alone upstairs while her family smiled for a camera without her. Mostly, though, I felt something colder and clearer than sympathy. She knows exactly what this feels like. She knows better than almost anyone alive what she just did to Lily. And she did it anyway. Does anyone else in the family know this story? I asked Eleanor. Most of the younger ones don't, she said. It's not something Roberta ever talks about. I only know because I was there. I was 12, and I remember thinking even then that it was cruel, watching her cry in the upstairs hallway while everyone else posed for pictures like nothing was wrong. Cruel enough that she remembered it for 50 years. Cruel enough that she built her entire adult identity around never letting a photograph look imperfect again. And instead of protecting the next generation from that same wound, she just handed it straight to my daughter. I didn't tell Craig about the photograph right away. I needed time to figure out exactly what I wanted to do with it, and some old instinct in me, the same instinct that had made me pause instead of calling Roberta directly, told me this wasn't information to waste on a private, easily deniable conversation. If I tell her privately, she explains it away. She always explains everything away. 2 weeks later, Whitney called me in a mild panic. Sophie, one of Roberta's blood grandchildren and one of the 3 matching blonde flower girls, had come down with chickenpox, badly enough, according to the pediatrician, that she'd be covered in spots well past the wedding date, no possible way to hide it for photographs. "We're 1 flower girl short," Whitney said, her voice tight with the particular stress of someone caught between her mother's plans and an actual crisis. "Mom's asking if Lily might still." There it is. 2 weeks after deciding my daughter didn't fit the photos, suddenly there's a hole in the lineup only she can fill. I felt something sharpen inside me, cold and precise. "Let me think about it," I said. "I'll call you back." I didn't call Roberta directly. I let Whitney relay the message, let 2 full days pass, let Roberta sit with the uncomfortable knowledge that the family she'd curated so carefully now had a visible gap in it, a gap only the child she'd erased could fill. Let her feel what it's like to need something from the person she decided didn't matter. In those 2 days, I finalized what I actually intended to do. Whitney had asked me weeks earlier, before any of this happened, to help put together the wedding's welcome slideshow, a tradition in Craig's family, decades of photographs projected during the reception dinner, a visual history of the family welcoming the new couple into it. I still had access to the shared photo folder. I still had the scanned copy of Eleanor's 1974 Christmas portrait, 6 children on a staircase in matching red sweaters, 1 child missing entirely from the frame. Roberta wants a photo-perfect wedding. She's about to learn that photographs remember everything, whether you're standing in them or not. I called Whitney back 2 days later, exactly as promised. "Lily would love to be part of the wedding," I said. "But I have a few conditions this time. And I think there's something you should see before I explain them." I attached the scanned photograph to a message and sent it, watching 3 small dots appear and disappear several times on my screen before Whitney finally responded. Now she understands exactly what her mother did. Now everyone's about to. The morning of the wedding was crisp and clear, early October sunlight cutting gold across the vineyard grounds outside Appleton where Whitney and her fiancé had chosen to say their vows. Lily stood in front of the mirror in her rehearsal dress, finally the real dress this time, twirling once, twice, checking her reflection with the serious concentration only a 7-year-old getting ready for something important can manage. She has no idea what's about to happen tonight. She just knows she gets to walk down the aisle after all. I told Whitney my conditions 2 weeks earlier, and to her credit, she'd agreed to all of them without hesitation. Lily walked as flower girl exactly the way she'd always been promised, no separate photos, no quiet exclusion from the official portraits. The second condition, the slideshow, Whitney had agreed to as well, though I don't think she fully understood what it would mean until she saw the finished version I sent her the night before the wedding. She'd called me in tears. "Megan, I had no idea. Mom never told any of us this. She never told anyone. She just made sure nobody else ever felt what she felt. Except she did it exactly backward." Lily walked the aisle that afternoon exactly on time, scattering petals with the same careful precision she'd practiced for weeks in our living room, gap-toothed smile wide and completely unbothered by anything the adults around her had spent the last month fighting about. I watched from the second row, Craig's hand tight around mine, and felt something in my chest ease for the first time in a month. Whatever happens tonight, she got this moment. Nobody can take this moment away from her now. Roberta sat in the front row, composed, elegant, the same careful performance of grace I'd watched her maintain through every family gathering for 4 years. She had no idea what was coming during the reception. Whitney had kept that part carefully quiet, exactly as I'd asked. The reception moved into dinner around 7, string lights glowing overhead, the vineyard's barn transformed into something soft and golden. Around 8, the DJ dimmed the lights for the traditional welcome slideshow, decades of family photographs beginning to cycle across the screen at the front of the room. Craig and Whitney as children, Roberta and her late husband on their own wedding day, generations of a family stretching back further than most of the room had ever seen laid out together like this. Here it comes. The photographs moved chronologically, decade by decade, warm and nostalgic, the kind of montage that draws soft laughs and quiet ah from a crowded room. Then, 1974 arrived. The Christmas portrait filled the screen. 6 children on a staircase in matching red sweaters, formal and stiff, a family posed exactly the way families posed back then. Beneath it, a caption I'd written myself, simple and unadorned. Christmas, 1974. One child is missing from this photograph. She was 8 years old, and she wasn't allowed to be in it because she didn't match the rest of the family. The room went quiet in a way I'd never heard a wedding reception go quiet before. The next slide showed a single photograph I'd asked Eleanor for specifically, a smaller, informal picture from that same Christmas, one Eleanor had kept tucked separately in her album for 50 years. A young girl, maybe 8 years old, sitting alone at the top of a staircase, knees pulled to her chest, staring down at a family gathered below her that she wasn't allowed to join. Beneath it, another caption. That little girl grew up to be an incredible mother and grandmother in so many ways. This year, she made the same decision that was made about her, leaving someone out of a family photograph for not matching the rest. We're sharing this tonight not to embarrass anyone, but because family stories like this one only stop repeating when we're finally willing to see them clearly. I watched Roberta's face from across the room as the slide changed, watched her go pale, then flushed, then still, her hand tightening around her wine glass in a way that made Craig's father lean over and quietly ask if she was all right. She's not all right. For the first time in 50 years, she's sitting in a room full of people who finally understand exactly why she is the way she is, and exactly what she did with that knowledge instead of using it to protect someone else. The final slide of that section showed Lily, mid-twirl in her flower girl dress from earlier that afternoon, gap-toothed smile filling the whole screen, scattered petals frozen in the air around her. No caption. None was needed. The room erupted into applause, not the polite kind, but something warmer, more complicated, an entire family processing 50 years of unspoken history in real time. Roberta stood up before the applause fully died down, her chair scraping against the barn's wooden floor, and for a moment I genuinely didn't know what she was going to do. She walked to the front of the room. "I need to say something," Roberta said, her voice unsteady in a way I had never once heard from her in 4 years of marriage. "Most of you didn't know that story. I never told anyone. I spent 50 years making sure every photograph I was ever part of again looked perfect, because I never wanted to feel the way I felt sitting on those stairs. Say the rest. Say what you actually did with that fear." And somewhere along the way, she continued, her eyes finding mine across the room, I stopped protecting people from that feeling and started protecting the photographs instead. I did to Lily exactly what was done to me, and I told myself it was about flowers and hair color, when it was actually about a fear I never dealt with honestly in 50 years. She looked directly at Lily, sitting at the kids' table near the front, confused by the sudden attention but watching her great-aunt with wide, curious eyes. "Lily, sweetheart, I am so sorry," Roberta said, her voice finally breaking. "You didn't do anything wrong. You never did anything wrong. I was wrong, and I hope someday you'll let me make it up to you properly." I won't pretend the room fully healed in that single moment, or that one apology, however genuine it sounded, erased a month of hurt or 50 years of a pattern nobody had ever named out loud before. Real change takes longer than a wedding reception. But something shifted permanently that night, in front of witnesses who would remember it, in a way private apologies whispered over the phone never could have matched. She got to hide this for 50 years. Tonight, she doesn't get to hide it anymore. And neither does the next generation, if they're paying attention. What happened in the months after unfolded slowly, the way real repair usually does. Roberta didn't transform overnight into a different person. Old habits, old fears, don't disappear because of one honest speech at a wedding. But she started showing up differently. She asked Lily to help pick out fabric for a Christmas stocking with her name embroidered on it, the first one Roberta had ever made for her in 4 years. She stopped introducing her as Craig's stepdaughter and started, slowly, simply saying her name. Whitney and Craig's father both told me separately, in the weeks after, that they'd never fully understood their mother until that slideshow, that a woman they'd spent their whole lives seeing as controlling and image-obsessed suddenly made a different kind of sense, without the behavior itself becoming any more excusable. Understanding why someone became who they are doesn't mean the people they hurt owe them a pass. It just means the next chapter gets to be different, if she actually chooses it. Lily still has the flower girl dress hanging in her closet, and sometimes, on quiet afternoons, I catch her twirling in it again just for fun, gap-toothed smile as wide as it was that October afternoon in the vineyard. I kept a copy of that slideshow too, the whole thing, not just the section about Roberta. Someday, when Lily's older, I want her to see it. Not the parts that hurt. The part where an entire family, most of them for the first time in their lives, chose honesty over a perfectly matched photograph. Roberta spent 50 years making sure nobody saw the parts of her story that hurt. Now, at least, Lily gets to grow up in a family that finally understands what happens when you let those parts stay hidden for too long, and what it takes, even imperfectly, even late, to finally set them down. If Megan's story hit you the way it hit us writing it, make sure you're subscribed with that notification bell on. We post a new story every week, and you don't want to miss the next one. Tell us in the comments, could you have forgiven Roberta the way this family did? See you in the next story.